When you open those decoration boxes this year, check carefully. You might find something that wasn't supposed to be there. Every year, millions of families bring down boxes from their attics, unpack ornaments and lights, and decorate their homes for Christmas. It's supposed to be a joyful tradition, hanging familiar decorations, reliving memories, creating new ones. But for some families, opening those Christmas boxes revealed something that shattered that joy forever. Tonight I'm sharing 6 creepy things people found in their Christmas decorations, from ornaments that show impossible photographs, to hidden cameras recording for weeks, to figures that move on their own.
These true stories prove that not everything in your Christmas boxes is there by accident.
Some things are left behind, some things are watching, and some things were never meant to be found. Let's start unpacking. In December 2018, the Patterson family moved into a house in suburban Michigan. It was a beautiful older home, built in the 1960s, well-maintained, perfect for their growing family. They'd been there about 6 months
when December rolled around and it was time to decorate for Christmas. Mrs. Patterson went up to the attic to retrieve the boxes they'd stored after moving in. Most of the boxes were theirs, clearly labeled, familiar contents. But there was one box in the corner she didn't recognize. It was old, taped shut with yellowed packing tape, and had no label. Curious, she brought it downstairs and opened it. Inside were Christmas ornaments, old ones, handmade, vintage, the kind passed down through generations. There were glass bulbs with faded paint, wooden figures carved by hand, and a small collection of photo ornaments, the kind with pictures sealed inside clear plastic frames. Mrs. Patterson pulled out one of the photo ornaments and held it up to the light. The photograph showed a family gathered around a Christmas tree. Oh, mother, father, and 3 children, all smiling. They were standing in a living room decorated with garland and stockings. Nothing unusual about it. Just a normal family Christmas photo from what looked like the 1970s, based on the clothing and the photo quality. But then Mrs. Patterson noticed something that made her blood run cold. The living room in the photo was her living room. Not similar, not kinda like it. Exactly the same. The fireplace, the built-in bookshelves, the window placement, even the crown molding was identical. This photograph had been taken in her house, decades before she lived there. Mrs. Patterson showed her husband. He examined it closely, comparing it to their actual living room. The match was undeniable. But here's what made it even more disturbing. The Patterson family had renovated the living room when they moved in. They'd repainted, replaced the flooring, updated the fireplace mantle. But in the photo, taken 50 years earlier, the room looked exactly as it did now, after their renovations, not as it would have looked in the 1970s when the photo was taken. The fireplace mantle was the same modern design they'd just installed. The paint color matched perfectly. Even the position of the furniture was identical to how they'd arranged it. It was as if the photo had been taken last week, but the clothes, the hairstyles, the photo quality, it was definitely from decades ago. Mrs. Patterson contacted the previous owners. They said they'd never seen that box before. It must have been left by someone even earlier. She tried to research the family in the photo, but she had no names, no information to go on. The ornament now sits in a drawer, wrapped in tissue paper. The Pattersons don't display it. They don't look at it. Mrs. Patterson said she can't shake the feeling that the photo is wrong, that it shouldn't exist, that it shows something that couldn't have happened. And sometimes, late at night, she wonders, if that photo was taken 50 years ago, how did it know what her living room would look like in 2018? That ornament was hidden in a box, left behind by someone who moved out. But what if someone who moved out never really left? What if they're still watching? Through something you hung on your door. In November 2020, a family in Ohio, we'll call them the Hendersons, bought a beautiful Christmas wreath from a local craft fair. It was handmade, decorated with pine cones, red berries, and a big red bow. They hung it on their front door the day after Thanksgiving, ready to start the holiday season. For 3 weeks, the wreath hung there, looking festive and welcoming. The Hendersons came and went, never suspecting anything was wrong. Then, in mid-December, their young daughter noticed something odd. She was examining the wreath up close. Kids do that. They notice details adults miss. And she saw a tiny lens hidden among the pine cones, too. "Mommy, why is there a camera in our wreath?" Mrs. Henderson laughed it off at first. "That's not a camera, sweetie. It's probably just a decoration." But when she looked closer, her daughter was right. Embedded in the wreath, camouflaged among the natural materials, was a small camera. Not just a fake prop camera. A real, functioning surveillance camera with a lens pointing directly at their front door. Mr. Henderson immediately took the wreath down and brought it inside. He carefully disassembled it and found not just the camera, but a battery pack and an SD card hidden in the backing. The camera was still recording. They pulled the SD card and examined it on their computer. What they found made them sick. Hours of footage, days of footage, 3 weeks of video, showing every time they left the house, every time they returned, every time a package was delivered, every visitor who came to their door. The camera had a wide-angle lens. It captured not just who was coming and going, but also when, how long they were gone, and what they were carrying. The footage included timestamps, dates, times, all meticulously recorded. The Hendersons called the police. Officers took the wreath and SD card as evidence and launched an investigation. They tried to trace where the wreath came from, who made it, who sold it at the craft fair. But here's the problem. Craft fairs are informal. Vendors often don't keep detailed records. The person who sold the wreath had paid cash for their booth space and never gave contact information. They'd set up, sold their wreaths, and left. No one knew who they were. No one remembered what they looked like. The wreath was homemade. No serial numbers, no manufacturer to trace. The investigation went cold. To this day, the Hendersons don't know who planted that camera. Was it someone randomly surveilling homes for burglaries? Was it someone specifically targeting their family? Had they been watched before, through other means? They installed a full home security system after that. They don't buy handmade decorations anymore. And every Christmas, when Mrs. Henderson sees wreaths for sale, she wonders, how many others have cameras hidden inside them? How many families are being watched right now? Through decorations hanging on their doors, and they have no idea. Cameras hidden in wreaths can be explained. Disturbing but explainable. Someone planted it. Someone was watching. But some Christmas decorations behave in ways that can't be explained at all. In 2017, a woman named Laura inherited a vintage nativity set from her grandmother, who had recently passed away. The set was beautiful. Hand-painted ceramic figures from the 1950s, each one carefully crafted. There were 10 figures total. Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, 3 wise men, 2 shepherds, an angel, and a donkey. Laura set the nativity on her fireplace mantel on December 1st, arranging the figures exactly as her grandmother always had. It was a way of honoring her memory, keeping the tradition alive. The next morning, Laura walked downstairs and stopped. The figures had been rearranged. Mary and Joseph, who she'd placed next to the manger, were now on opposite ends of the display. One of the wise men was facing backward. The angel was lying on its side. Laura assumed her husband had moved them, maybe bumped the mantel. She fixed the arrangement and went about her day. The next morning, they were moved again. This time, all 3 wise men were grouped together, far from the manger. The shepherds were facing away. And the angel was missing entirely. Laura searched the mantel, the floor, the area around the fireplace. The angel was gone. "Did you move the nativity figures?" she asked her husband. "No, I thought you were rearranging them." Neither of them had touched it. That night, Laura set up her phone to record the mantel while they slept. She wanted to see if maybe they had a mouse or some animal knocking the figures over. In the morning, she reviewed the footage. At 2:47 a.m., the camera captured something that made her delete the video immediately. The figures moved on their own. Not falling, not being knocked over. They slid across the mantel, slowly, deliberately, repositioning themselves. The wise men moved together, as if walking. The shepherds turned, and the angel, the one that had been missing, reappeared, rising up from behind baby Jesus as if it had been hiding. Laura's hands were shaking as she watched. She showed her husband. They both sat in silence, staring at the screen. Laura packed up the nativity set that same day. She drove to her parents' house and told them she couldn't keep it in her home anymore. Her mother took one look at her face and didn't ask questions. She just took the box and put it in their basement. But here's the thing. Laura's mother started experiencing the same thing, figures rearranging overnight, the angel disappearing and reappearing. And one morning, her mother found all the figures gathered in a circle, facing outward, as if watching the room. The nativity set now sits in a storage unit. No one in the family wants it home. Laura's mother said she'd rather throw it away than keep it, but she's afraid of what might happen if they do. Some things, she believes, shouldn't be discarded. They should just be contained. Laura never found out why the figures moved. Her grandmother had owned the set for over 60 years and never mentioned anything strange, but maybe she knew. Maybe that's why, in her will, she left it to Laura with a simple note: keep them together, don't let them separate. Laura didn't understand what that meant until it was too late. Inherited decorations can carry strange histories, but sometimes the creepiest things you find in your Christmas boxes aren't from your family at all. They're from someone else. Someone who used to live in your house. When the Morrison family bought their house in 2019, the previous owners had left in a hurry. Divorce, they were told. The sale was quick. The house was emptied fast. And the Morrisons got a good deal because of it. They moved in, settled down, and that December decided to explore the attic to see if there was room to store their Christmas decorations. The attic was mostly empty, but in one corner they found a cardboard box labeled Xmas. Assuming the previous owners had accidentally left it, Mrs. Morrison opened the box to see if it was worth keeping or if they should throw it out. Inside were Christmas decorations, lights, garland, a few ornaments, and underneath everything, an envelope full of photographs. Mrs. Morrison pulled them out. They were family photos, candid Christmas shots. People gathered around a tree, opening presents, smiling at the camera. Normal holiday photos. Except they were taken inside the Morrisons' house. Not the previous owners. These weren't the people who'd sold them the house. These were strangers, a different family entirely. And the photos looked recent, not decades old. The clothing was modern. The photo quality was digital print quality. These had been taken within the last 5 years. Mrs. Morrison looked closer. In one photo, the family was sitting on the couch in the living room, the same couch the Morrisons now owned. The previous owners had sold it to them as part of the furnishings. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was the date stamp visible in the corner of one photo, December 24, 2018. The Morrisons bought the house in April 2019. The previous owners had supposedly lived there until then. But this family in the photos, these strangers, had celebrated Christmas in this house just months before the sale, and they weren't the previous owners. Mrs. Morrison showed the photos to her husband. They contacted their realtor, who contacted the previous owners. When the realtor asked about other people living in the house, the previous owners were confused. No one else lived there. It was just us. Then who are these people? The realtor asked, sending photos. There was a long pause. Then, we've never seen them before. The Morrisons filed a police report. Detectives investigated but couldn't identify the people in the photos. Facial recognition searches came up empty. The family in the photos didn't match any missing persons reports. They were just unknown. One theory was that the previous owners had rented out the house on Airbnb, or VRBO, without declaring it, and these were guests. But there were no records of that, no listings, no rental history. Another theory was that someone had broken into the house and staged these photos. But why? And how did they get the couch that was already there? The Morrison family never got answers. They threw the photos away and changed all the locks, even though the locks had already been changed when they bought the house. But sometimes, late at night, Mrs. Morrison wonders, what if those people are still out there? What if they have a key? What if they think this house is still theirs? And what if, next Christmas, they come back? At least those photos were from adults. But what if you found something left behind by a child? Something that made you realize the previous owner might still be in the house, in a way you never expected? The Williams family started their Elf on the Shelf tradition in December 2021. Their daughter, Emma, was 5 years old, the perfect age to believe in the magic. They named the elf Jingle, and each night, Mrs. Williams would move it to a new location for Emma to find in the morning. Mrs. Williams was diligent. She'd take photos of where she placed the elf each night, just to keep track of ideas and make sure she didn't repeat locations. It was all documented, all planned. But then, something strange started happening. Emma would find the elf in places Mrs. Williams hadn't put it. At first, Mrs. Williams thought she'd just forgotten. Maybe she'd moved it while half asleep. But when she checked her photos, the elf was in different positions than what she'd documented. One morning, Emma found the elf sitting on top of the refrigerator, holding a tiny candy cane. Mrs. Williams checked her photos from the night before. She'd placed the elf on the bathroom counter, not the refrigerator. Another morning, the elf was sitting inside Emma's dollhouse, surrounded by the dolls. Mrs. Williams had put it on the kitchen windowsill. Mrs. Williams started asking her husband if he was moving the elf, He swore he wasn't. She checked the timestamps on her photos. They were taken at night, after everyone was in bed. Then, one morning, Mrs. Williams reviewed the photos on her phone and saw something that made her drop the device. In the background of one of her elf placement photos, a photo she'd taken of the elf sitting on the bookshelf, there was another elf visible in Emma's bedroom doorway, in the dark, watching. But the Williams family only owned one elf. Mrs. Williams showed her husband. They enlarged the photo. The second elf was definitely there. Same red outfit, same white face, same smile. But it was standing in a position Mrs. Williams had never placed it. They checked Emma's room, one elf. The same elf they'd always had, no second elf anywhere in the house. Mrs. Williams went through all her photos from that December. In 7 different photos, the second elf appeared in the background, always partially hidden, always in a doorway or behind furniture, always watching. And in every photo, it was closer to Emma's room. On December 23rd, Mrs. Williams decided she'd had enough. She packed up the elf and put it in the garage. That night, she didn't set it out. No more elf on the shelf. The tradition was over. Christmas morning, Emma woke up and ran downstairs. "Mommy, Jingle left me a note." Mrs. Williams's stomach dropped. She walked into the living room. The elf was sitting under the Christmas tree, exactly where she'd never placed it, and next to it was a handwritten note, in handwriting Mrs. Williams didn't recognize. "Thank you for letting me stay. I'll see Emma next year." Mrs. Williams threw the elf away that same day. She didn't tell Emma about the note. She just said Jingle had gone back to the North Pole early. But that night, when she was tucking Emma into bed, Emma said something that made Mrs. Williams' blood run cold. "Mommy, Jingle's friend said he'll come back next Christmas. He was nice. He played with me when you weren't looking." Mrs. Williams never bought another elf on the shelf, and she never asked Emma what Jingle's friend looked like. Andy. Some things, she decided, are better left unknown. That family's elf tradition ended with an unexplained visitor. But the final story isn't about something that appeared in Christmas decorations. It's about something that was hidden there all along, waiting to be found. In 2016, a couple renovating their attic in Vermont discovered something that made them stop work immediately and call the police. They were pulling down old insulation when they found a stack of letters tucked between the beams. The letters were written in children's handwriting, on notebook paper that had yellowed with age. They were addressed to Santa Claus. At first, the couple thought it was sweet kids writing letters to Santa, maybe hiding them in the attic so their parents wouldn't find them. But when they read the letters, they realized these weren't typical Christmas wishes for them. The first letter, dated December 1982, read, "Dear Santa, please help us. Mommy and Daddy fight all the time. Daddy hurts Mommy. I'm scared. Can you make him stop? I've been good. Please help. Love, Sarah." The second letter, dated December 1983. "Dear Santa, Daddy says you're not real, but I know you are. Please take us away from here. Mommy is sad all the time. I take care of my sister, but we're scared. Please, Santa. Love, Sarah." There were 12 letters total, spanning from 1982 to 1987, each one more desperate than the last. Each one signed by Sarah, and, in later letters, her younger sister Beth. The final letter, dated December 1987, simply read, "Santa, if you're real, please save us." The couple contacted local police, who searched records for families named Sarah and Beth, who had lived at that address in the 1980s. They found a match. A family had lived there from 1980 to 1988. But Sarah and Beth, the daughters, were listed as missing. They'd disappeared in January 1988. No bodies were ever found. The father was investigated but never charged. The mother died in 1995. The case went cold decades ago. The letters were turned over to detectives, who reopened the investigation. But, with both parents dead and no new evidence, there was little they could do. The couple who found the letters said they couldn't finish the renovation. They sold the house and moved. They said they couldn't live in a place where children had been so desperate, so scared, that they hid letters to Santa in the attic, hoping somehow he'd find them and rescue them. And no one did. To this day, Sarah and Beth's disappearance remains unsolved. Their letters, hidden in Christmas decorations, tucked into insulation, waiting to be found, are the only evidence that they ever asked for help. They wrote to Santa. They believed in magic. They thought if they were good enough, someone would come save them. But no one came. And now, every Christmas, someone in Vermont is living in that house.
Decorating for the holidays. Celebrating with their own children. Never knowing what's hidden in the attic. Never knowing that two little girls once hid letters there, begging for rescue. Letters that were found 30 years too late.
These are 6 creepy things people found in their Christmas decorations.
From impossible photographs, to hidden cameras, to nativity figures that move on their own, to strangers, photos in your house, to elves that appear where they shouldn't, to letters from missing children. These stories prove that not everything in your Christmas boxes is what it seems. This year, when you bring down those decoration boxes from your attic, take a moment, look carefully, check what's inside, because sometimes Christmas decorations carry more than memories. Sometimes they carry secrets. Sometimes they carry warnings, and sometimes they carry pieces of the past that were never meant to be found.
Stay safe this Christmas, and remember, not everything under your tree is a gift.